Good morning, I'm Julian Reed and welcome to Today in Parliament.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Janaea Noel Ferguson. Welcome to another show. Now, Today in Parliament takes a look back at present legislation and previous debates.
Well, the country is still in recovery mode from the devastating impact of Hurricane Joaquin. And as the Prime Minister indicated during the last sitting of the House, we can expect a series of communications on the impact and the recovery process as assessments of the affected areas continue. Now, during the last House sitting, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition gave first-hand accounts of the hurricane damage. Now, later in the show, we'll reflect on what they had to say.
That's right, Julian. A bill is also expected to be introduced today to reform BEC. That bill will establish a new company within BEC that will include a non-partisan board to manage operations of the company. The government, however, entered into agreement with PowerSecure Bahamas earlier this year to do just that.
Yes, but today, parliamentarians are expected to debate and pass two resolutions. The first is a resolution to sell a parcel of land to the National Insurance Board for $10.
Yes, a mere $10. Now, that piece of land, according to the resolution, measures about 50 square feet and is located on the northern side of Carmichael Road, immediately west of the public library and post office here in New Providence.
And to be more specific, the land is bounded towards the north by lots 10 and 11 of Sunset Close subdivision, on the east by a portion of land said to be the property of the government of the Bahamas. That property is recorded by the Lands and Surveys Department as Plan number 3110, south on the main public road, and the western boundary is John's Shopping Plaza.
Yes, that is very clear directions as to where that property is, but there's no clear reason that we know as yet for the purchase of this land or what it will be used for, but we can expect to get those details during this morning's debate. Now, the second resolution expected to be debated and passed today will allow the government to borrow $4,740,000 from the Caribbean Development Bank for the financing of the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, or BTVI, and that's for their enhancement project.
You're absolutely right. Now, it includes improvements of the learning environment, governance and management systems, the enhancement of the capacity for quality technical vocational education and training delivery, as well as outreach programs to the Family Islands and project management.
Well, much needed. The project also expands and improves functions of BTVI with some emphasis on the Family Islands. Now, the resolution seeks to improve the quality of the workforce development and learning opportunities for post-secondary students at BTVI.
Now, the Caribbean Development Bank's website provides more details on exactly what the funds will be used for, and here's what we found. The project will include the construction of a smart classroom block to accommodate 200 students, the rehabilitation of 7 existing classrooms, furniture, tools and equipment, and learning material for the Nassau and Freeport campuses. It will also include energy efficiency enhancement of selected buildings at the Nassau campus, a maintenance plan and consultancy services to support the implementation of renewable energy.
Now, the website also indicated that the government requested this loan by letter dated May 13, 2014, as part of the national strategic goal to enhance the human resource capacity of the country, and that's to meet its existing and emerging socio-economic development needs.
And it was also noted, Janaea, that the thrust for high-quality, demand-driven technical facilities and opportunities in the Bahamas has increasingly become a policy focus to ensure that the labor market needs of the economy are addressed in a sustainable manner. Now, like in other parts of the region, technical and vocational opportunities are provided largely through publicly subsidized institutions.
That's right, Julian. Well, BTVI, it is the largest provider in the country of these opportunities. In 2014, they recorded an enrollment of 4,977 students. 60% were females, and 12% of that population were comprised of students from Grand Bahama.
And there are other institutions, including the College of the Bahamas and the National Training Agency, that provide technical and vocational training, but those programs are limited. In secondary education, the Ministry of Education has adopted the Career Academy concept and a rebranding of technical and vocational courses to Career and technology education.
Well, the Caribbean Development Bank's website, Julian, also pointed out that the government of the Bahamas is the main financial provider of BTVI's and COB's programs in this area, meeting about 80% or 55% of the recurrent budget of the institutions, respectively.
And the key issues and challenges that were highlighted by the Caribbean Development Bank indicated that technical and vocational provisions are not demand-driven, and that contributes to the critical shortage of skilled nationals to satisfy labor market needs here. It also showed that programs are not fully responsive to industry needs.
And we've seen that challenge time and time again.
Absolutely.
And employers have also indicated that the greatest recruitment difficulty is underqualified applications, followed by the lack of soft skills. Now, the Caribbean Development Bank also noted that the technical and vocational system has a low status, plagued by a stereotyping of this type of training and its ability to provide those skills. I guess some students do shy away from those vocational subjects because of the stereotype and perception that is in society.
That's true. Well, we expect to hear more details about this loan and the need for improvements to BTVI during this morning's debate. But just to give our viewers and listeners some background on BTVI, it was established in 1980 as the Industrial Training Center and incorporated by an act of Parliament in April 2010. It was implemented as a semi-autonomous entity on July 1st, 2011. Its mandate, among other things, is to provide technical and vocational training, employment and entrepreneurship in partnership with the public and private sector.
That's right, Julian. In 2010, the Act confers on BTVI the authority to grant awards to assume greater autonomy for its financial and administrative affairs. Now, BTVI is also obligated to prepare and submit annual reports. Now, the institution serves a diverse student population from all walks of life, but completion rates at BTVI or of BTVI programs are low, and that's plagued by a high attrition rate of 60% based on numerous factors, including lack of financial resources and access to some semi and low skilled jobs, which are not unusual in the technical and vocational sector. Now, according to the Caribbean Development Bank's report, this results in graduation rates of 25% in the prescribed time frame.
Yeah, well, let's discuss a little bit about the highlights of the last sitting of the House of Assembly, Jaya. Prime Minister Perry Christie and Opposition Leader Dr. Hubert Minnis both communicated their initial assessments in the wake of Hurricane Joaquin and discussed the way forward to restore normalcy to the islands that were hardest hit.
As you heard, Prime Minister Perry Christie pointed out that the storm was powerful and intense as it meandered over the islands in the central and southeast Bahamas, relentlessly assaulting our environment.
The nation's leader noted that undoubtedly the impact of the storm will be on the minds and felt in the hearts of Bahamians for many years to come. He gave a comprehensive breakdown of the storm. He also communicated to the House that the controversial Doppler radar system was in full operation.
Well, as you know, there's been much talk about the Doppler radar system in recent days, and the Minister of Transport and Aviation, the Honorable Glenys Hanna Martin, has also confirmed that the system was in full operation during the storm, and the employees at the Department of Meteorology simply had to restart or reboot the system. She says that this is something they knew they should have done.
And of course, we received weather alerts here at ZNS that were released by the Department of Meteorology from the time Joaquin was a depression. The first alert was issued on Sunday, September 27th, as Tropical Storm 11. From that point on, we verified that the Met Office alerts were consistent with the National Hurricane Center's alerts until Thursday, October 1st at 5 a.m., when they broke rank and issued a hurricane warning. That was alert number 10 for the entire Bahamas.
That was the first time Hurricane Joaquin was issued as a warning for the first time in the Bahamas. And as you mentioned, Julian, they broke or were in breach of the protocols that were established. But as we hear in this next clip, there's going to be obviously a lot of talk about this radar system, what is coming up. Communications are expected on Hurricane Joaquin and the impact during the morning session of the House. But another issue that was talked about in the public in recent days was whether or not that, or the monies collected from that, will be used to assist in these relief efforts. And we spoke with the Minister of Finance, Michael Halkitis, on that. Here's that report. There is a resounding question. Why not use that funds for the necessary infrastructural repairs to communities in the southern Bahamas hardest hit by Hurricane Joaquin? According to Minister of State for Finance, Michael Halkitis, all revenue collected by the government will go into a consolidated fund. That fund will go toward defraying the cost of the government, and that includes relief and repair efforts.
The VAT revenue will be used to defray government expenditure, and the VAT revenue will be used to help in some of the rebuilding. To the extent that we cannot work within this budget, then we go towards further borrowing. What happens is the VAT revenue, revenue from customs duties, revenue from real property tax, revenue from tourism, revenue from gaming, revenue from business license, revenue from road traffic, it all goes into the consolidated fund, and then that is portioned off and we defray the expenses of the government. And so yes, a portion of it definitely will go.
There has also been a concern that reprioritizing government financing because of the extensive hurricane damage could result in an increase of a value-added tax. And there's the view that come January, there could also be a new tax for the implementation of the National Health Scheme. Now, Halkitis insisted this won't be the case. Now, Prime Minister Perry Christie had estimated that some $60 million would be needed to repair those islands impacted by Hurricane Joaquin. Halkitis says they'll look at all options and ensure that borrowing those funds is the last resort.
We're going into Cabinet this morning, and so we expect to get an update. And we'll see whether that number has grown or whether that has decreased. What it's up to us to do now is to do the assessment, find out what the costs are. In the first instance, establish whether we can reprioritize some of the things that are in this budget. And then as a final recourse, then we seek to borrow any additional monies.
Halkitis admitted that borrowing is a concerning factor, as it will undoubtedly add to the country's national debt. He points out that it's all about the proper management of those funds.
The greater reality is that you have to be able to manage it. And so to the extent that your revenues do not cover your expenses, you move towards you want to move towards a situation where it does, where you do not have to. Currently, we are not in that situation. What we have to do in that case is just be as prudent as we can in our spending.
It's confirmed that they've also reached out to the Chinese and the Caribbean Development Bank to see what borrowing options may be available. Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Well, as we continue with the Prime Minister's communication on Hurricane Joaquin, the Bahamas began receiving assistance almost immediately, Janaea, from all over the world.
That's right.
A request was also made of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, SEDEMA, to provide assistance, while the operations of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, were questioned during the storm. Prime Minister Perry Christie said they, along with their partners, worked very quickly to put in place immediate relief.
Well, Julian, the Prime Minister also outlined relief efforts that dealt with organizing a number of planes to fly out to the impacted islands. This included efforts by Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner, who made attempts of her own to bring relief to her constituents in the Long Island constituency.
Opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis also communicated to the House his assessment of the storm and made a number of suggestions about how to proceed.
And he made a number of points also noting that this was a time when we were at a crossroad in the country, and he said it seemed as if all hope was lost, but when the storm happened, the relief efforts and the banding together of Bahamians was so immediate that it showed that Bahamians can still come together on a united front.
Absolutely. And the Central Grand Bahama MP, Nico Grant, spoke on behalf of Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner, providing the House with an update on relief efforts there, and he commended her for her work.
Now, during those communications during the last session of the House, both the government and the opposition have committed to working together to ensure that these islands return back to normal as soon as possible.
All right. Minister of State for Finance Michael Halkitis told
that's what we talked about. He told reporters yesterday that, you know, there's been so much talk about how will these VAT funds be used, and he confirmed that while not all of it, but some of it will be used toward relief efforts in those impacted islands. But he also gave an update on the exigency orders for those impacted by Hurricane Joaquin. He said there was some concern over the time frame to import goods, but as the need arises and as persons have a need, that time frame of 30 days can be extended. Here's what he had to say.
It's very early days. What we will be doing, we're meeting in Parliament tomorrow. We'll be seeking to give an update on how many applications have come in. And I just want to reiterate, again, there's been some concern about the initial order being for 30 days. It has been our practice in the country to issue initial orders, and then as it becomes necessary to do extensions. That has been our experience in the recent past. So Bahamians need not fear that they will run out of time. What we do is we manage it, and as we see the volume of, if we see that there's still a volume of requests that remain, we're prepared to extend because we want to see everybody recover.
Janelle, we don't really expect to have a lengthy sitting today, do we?
No, we don't. As indicated by the speaker just moments ago, the Prime Minister is expected to make another communication to the House, and he said during the last meeting that we can expect a series of these communications to happen because obviously assessments in these islands are ongoing. What may have taken place 1 week could totally change within a week, as we have crews like BEC, BTC in there continually working to get those islands back online, getting the lights back on in some of these islands. I know, for instance, Crooked Island, I believe, is still without light, and they're still having some issues. The whole power plant, I understand, has been submerged underwater, so it's going to take really some redoubling of the efforts in these islands to get them back to where they were.
And, you know, we have to remember, too, that it's been, about 3 weeks, right?
It has
Which I'm sure for the people who have been affected, that's been like an eternity.
Yes.
But we're still in the very initial stages of recovery, so this is going to be a very long situation. Hopefully, 6 months from now, we'll see a lot. I mean, hopefully even by Christmas, we'll see some great improvement.
We're really hoping to see some progress, but as you said, it is going to take a long time. And the fact that these islands are so far removed, they're not as close to the U.S. to get that immediate relief as quickly as would be expected. But kudos to the island of Exuma and those officials there who've really band together to assist in using Exuma as a hub to get those relief items to those impacted.
You know, and a few weeks ago I was actually in Exuma just to see how all of that was working, and really very efficient.
Tight ship.
And people out of Palm Beach, Florida, and other areas in Florida coming down, just people who usually vacation there, coming in their own planes and pack it up and going to the islands. It was really amazing to see. I saw some 15 flights just go in one day.
Wow. And we've seen the organization of flights all across the board, and I'm sure this is no cheap or cheap task to take on, because fuel, as we know, is expensive. We've heard the calls that, you know, we have the goods here, but we need planes. We need to get them out of our warehouse, out of where they've been collecting in different trailers in different islands. I know Grand Bahama, Abaco, Bimini, most of the islands in the north who've really felt the impact of this type of storm in the past have really band together and are also lending their assistance.
And there's also a problem with refueling in the south. Don't forget now, all the islands that are there, they can't,
that's true,
you know, give any fuel. So it's you got to take the fuel down there. So it's a greater challenge.
One of the interesting things that we talked to the Minister of State for Finance, Michael Halkitis, about was the possibility of going back to these islands, persons going back to these islands to live, when we look at places like Crooked Island that was totally destroyed, roads, so much infrastructure needs to be put in, you have to ask the question, does it make financial sense to rebuild in these areas that are so vulnerable?
Well,
and here's what he had to say.
Is how do we disaster-proof, so to speak, our economies, and the Bahamas being an island nation, being low-lying, it's a question that's very, very relevant to us, and so that's something that we're going to have to examine. And so, to the extent that, for example, you had a road that's on the coast that is vulnerable to sea surge and vulnerable to hurricane, then the question has to be asked, when you're rebuilding, do you move that to higher ground? The same thing with settlements. And so it's a very, very good question, and I think we have to, because we're spending, again, we come back to the economics of it, we're spending taxpayers' money, and so we have to make sure that that is well spent.
Well, if you are just tuning in to us, the House of Assembly, we expect to get this sitting underway quite soon. It's not expected to be a very long one today, but as you know, the country is still in recovery mode from Hurricane Joaquin. And during the last sitting of the House, the Prime Minister said we can expect a series of communications on the impact and recovery as the move to help those who were affected continues. And today we expect to get another of those.
Another update,
Yes.
another update. And I'm sure, as we said, these updates will continue to happen. But today in the House of Assembly, we also expect a new bill to be introduced to reform BEC. That bill is to establish a new company within BEC that will include a non-partisan board to manage the operations of the company. Now, as you remember, or you may remember, the government entered into agreement with PowerSecure in July of this year to do just that, and all of that includes efforts to move toward alternative forms of energy. There was also a bill passed earlier this year that allows persons to tie into BEC's grid. So we may have an update on how many applicants have signed on or asked or requested of the government to tie in, because that was a procedure that they had to follow. But today in Parliament, parliamentarians are expected to pass two resolutions. The first is a resolution to sell a parcel of land to the National Insurance Board for $10.
That's right, and the land, according to the resolution, measures about 56 square feet and is located on the northern side of Carmichael Road, immediately west of the public library and post office here in New Providence.
Now, as you may know, the land is bounded toward the north by lots 10 and 11 of the Sunset Close subdivision, east of the portion of lands of the government of the Bahamas that is recorded by the Lands and Surveys Department as number 3110, south of the main public road, the western boundary, and that's near John's Shopping Plaza.
Now, it's not clear the reason for the purchase or what the land will be used for, but we can expect to get those details during the debate. Now, the second resolution is expected to be debated and passed today and will allow the government to borrow $4,740,000 from the Caribbean Development Bank for the financing of the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, BTVI's enhancement project.
Well, Julian, it includes improvements of the learning environment at BTVI, governance and management systems, the enhancement of the capacity for quality technical vocational education and training delivery, as well as outreach programs to the Family Islands and project management.
Right. It also expands and improves the functions of BTVI with some emphasis on the Family Islands. And that's very critical now that we see what's happening in the South,
That's
to see how all of this will be rolled out. As the National Development Plan comes into place too. It also impacts the workforce development and learning opportunities for post-secondary schools at BTVI.
Now, the Caribbean Development Bank's website provides more details on exactly what the funds will be used for. And during our research, here's what we found. The project will include the construction of a smart classroom block to accommodate some 200 students, the rehabilitation of 7 existing classrooms, furniture, equipment, tools, and learning material for Nassau and the Freeport campuses. Now, it will also include energy efficient enhancement of selected buildings at the Nassau campus. Now, a maintenance plan and consultancy service to support the implementation of the plan is also expected to be a part of this loan.
Absolutely. The website also indicated that the government requested this loan by letter dated May 13, 2014, as part of a national strategic goal to enhance the human resource capacity of the country to meet its existing and emerging socioeconomic development needs.
Now, it was also noted that the thrust for high-quality, demand-driven technical and vocational skills and opportunities was much needed in the Bahamas, and it has become increasingly a policy to focus on to ensure that the labor market needs of the economy are met and addressed in a sustainable manner. Like in other parts of the region, technical and vocational opportunities are limited, really.
Absolutely. Now, we know that BTVI is the largest provider in the country of these opportunities. In 2014, they recorded an enrollment of 4,977 students. 45% were female, and 12% of its population were comprised of students from Grand Bahama.
Now, Julian, there are other institutions, including the College of the Bahamas, the National Training Agency, that provide technical and vocational training, but these are limited. Well, as you can see on your screen, the House of Assembly is about to begin. We'll take you to live proceedings and have a final wrap-up at 1 o'clock. I'm Janae Noel Ferguson.
And I'm Julian Reed.
Thanks so
Lord,
much.
for he is good, for his mercies endureth forever. And St. Paul picks it up in the New Testament and says, in everything, give thanks. I'm pleased this morning to remind you that God is still God, and he is merciful and gracious. And we've come with a grateful heart this morning to give him thanks for what he has done. Somebody said, well, you know, after all the ups and downs and the disasters, you still think it's appropriate to give thanks? Yes, and yes again. Somebody said, we give thanks if only because it's no worse than it is. And so let us, with a grateful heart, come to this honorable house this morning to thank God for his mercies and his loving kindness. Let us pray. Our gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we thank you again this morning for the privilege of being right here in this honorable house. For all the things that have transpired since last we met, we give our humble but hearty thanks. For we know that in all things you work it out together for good for those who love the Lord. Our minds go back to those, our Father, who have been adversely affected by the hurricane, especially in Long Island and Crooked Island and Ackland and San Salvador and Long Key and Rum Key and elsewhere. Lord, remember thy servants. We thank you for the generosity that has been displayed already by our people. And as these honorable members sit together this morning and deal with the items on the agenda, we thank you for them and the examples they set in sacrificial giving that our people might be cared for. Bless the leaders of our country, especially the Prime Minister and his cabinet, as they deal with these heavy matters at this season. We pray for those in authority, that we will respect that authority, and we will do our part to make this country the best little country this side of heaven. Lord, in thy mercy, remember your servant, our speaker, as he chairs this morning's meeting. Bless those who shall speak. Make them good communicators. Give them clarity of speech and thought. And may the message that they bring reach our people and give us hope and courage in these times. Forgive us our sins, and bless those charged with the responsibility of the recovery, wherever they are and wherever they serve. Give them strength and wisdom to do it quickly, that our people might soon be in the places they long to be. And by thy grace, our Father, when the kingdom of God does come, bring us with the faithful into the glories of your everlasting kingdom, we pray through Jesus Christ our Lord, who taught us when we pray to say together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. Today is Wednesday, October 21st, 2015. I'd like to welcome you back to this honorable house. Today we are continuing a sitting that began at our last sitting. And when we were here last, we were at the point of the agenda called Statements and Communication by Ministers. I am advised, in the absence of the House Leader and the Member of Parliament for Bain and Grantstown, the Member for West End and Bimini will serve as House Leader for today's sitting. But before we get to the agenda, just by way of announcement, as a reminder for Garden Hill residents, constituents, and also the wider community, there is a free legal aid clinic to be held this coming Saturday, October 24th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Bahamas Faith Ministries International. There will be 30-minute consultation sessions, free of charge. You may reserve your space today if you were to call the Bar Association. This is done in conjunction with the Bahamas Bar Association, 393-3222. That's the Bahamas Bar Association and Bahamas Faith Ministries International, free legal aid clinic. Call 393-3222 for those who are interested. Secondly, we are now in the midst of National Youth Month under the theme Youth Matter. And as traditional, we always encourage our young people, and we will do so from this house when the young people have their traditional youth parliament this coming Friday. That would be Friday the 23rd at 10 a.m. So tune in at Cable 40, the parliamentary channel, to witness the young people debate issues of the day. And of course, the Minister and the Member of Parliament for Carmichael at the appropriate time will give you further information. Finally, I'd just like to take this opportunity to extend condolences to the family of Bishop Tooten, Dr. Tooten Stubbs, who had passed recently, a native of Orange Creek, Cat Island, a distinguished educator for almost 40 years, trained at many institutions, namely the Bahamas Teachers College, University of Birmingham, University of the West Indies, Nova, and Trinity Theological Seminary. Quite a scholar. Several positions he held in education, culminating as acting director, authored several booklets, and for his labor in the vineyard and education, he was honored with the Member of the British Empire, MBE, in 1987. According to his biography, he states that his greatest accomplishment was the 24th of May, 1960, when he met a man named Jesus. And from that day, he has been a dutiful follower until his death. He's been actively engaged in various ministries, culminating with senior pastor of Southland Church Cathedral. Bishop Stubbs is survived by another educator, his dear wife, Helena Nee Stewart, and their 5 children, Reverend Dr. Henderson Stubbs, Sidney Stubbs, former Member of Parliament for Holy Cross, Antonio Stubbs, former Vice President of BTC, Professor Pam Collins, and Dr. Kayla Stubbs Moore. Honorable members, another great Bahamian has moved off the scene. He has planted many seeds of hope and encouragement, particularly in my life, as an exhorter, and he has done his part. Now he has taken his rest. A memorial service will be held on what would have been his 83rd birthday this coming Friday at 7 p.m. at Southland Cathedral, and his homegoing service will be held Saturday the 24th at Church of God Auditorium, Joe Farrington Road at 10 a.m. May he rest in peace. Now to the business at hand. Statements and communication by ministers. The chair recognizes the right honorable member for Centerville.
I'm much obliged, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to make an updated communication on the impacts of Hurricane Joaquin. But before doing so, let me also join you in the commendation that you made for Bishop Tootin Stubbs in being able to recognize on behalf of the government and people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that he was a great contributor, particularly in the field of education. He came from a generation of Bahamians who was committed to a special kind of service to our country. He served in so many different islands as a teacher and principal of the schools in our country. And those islands touch Acklins, touch Cat Island, touch Andros, New Providence, but he served magnificently, and the record would reflect that. In the latter stages of his professional life, he was elevated to the positions in the ministry where he served with distinction in various offices in the ministry, right up to, on the occasions, acting as the director or deputy director of education. But administratively, he straddled all of the offices in the field of education, making his contribution. And then at that stage, as you just announced, he went to the church, where in the Church of God, he became a very distinguished minister of religion, one who brought academia with him on all of the professional sense of excellence and pursuit of excellence in the carrying out of his duties as a pastor, particularly at the Southland Church of God. So he himself has produced a family, one of whom became a member of parliament, another a leading executive for Bahamas Telecommunications Company, and he has, that executive is a member of the task force, now in the final stages of liberalization. He's had several professors, and so with respect to family, he also, Mr. Speaker, demonstrates the power of the Bahamian family. So on behalf of all of us, Mr. Speaker, I would wish to commend the work and service and the life and times of Bishop Tootin Stubbs. Mr. Speaker, on October 7th, I informed this House in some detail about the devastation that had occurred in the southeastern Bahamas, more particularly the islands of Acklins, including Samana Key, Crooked Island, Long Key, Long Island, San Salvador, and Rum Key. I spent a significant part of that communication focusing on the immediate actions undertaken by the government of the Bahamas and related agencies, beginning once the all clear had been issued on the 3rd of October and continuing up to the time of my communication on the morning of the 7th of October. Since that time, much has happened, and this particular communication will serve as an update on the integrated efforts of agencies of the government and by those private and public sector entities who are charged with direct responsibilities for vital infrastructure in the islands affected by the hurricane. All areas of the emergency response are equally critical, and it is for this reason that I stress the use of the term integrated efforts. It is to be noted that this information is current as of Tuesday, the 20th of October, 2015, when teams making the final run around the affected areas, pre-construction teams, I would say, Mr. Speaker, pre-contractor teams, Mr. Speaker, where the final scoping, both by private sector and public sector professionals, are now taking place. Some of them have taken place, and the officers and persons returning to New Providence. But this is the stage, Mr. Speaker, where the decisions would be made for construction and rebuilding of the infrastructure. I now turn to the details of the recovery reports that have been furnished to me. I would like to begin, Mr. Speaker, by updating the country on the restoration of vital communication, electrical, water, and sanitation, and transportation infrastructure in the areas of concern. And Mr. Speaker, just before doing so, I think it's important for me to say that I'm reporting on a collection, a significant number of persons contributing to their findings and their information on the ground in these areas. And just as of this morning, because I received a call from a hill in Chesters, and I therefore knew that someone was calling from Athens, I was able to say, to correct information given to me about cell sites, Mr. Speaker, because the only way they were able to make that telephone using a cell phone is in fact connecting with a cell site in Crooked Island. And therefore you go to Chesters or Lovely Bay for that purpose. Otherwise, you can't communicate by telephone from Athens, other than a satellite phone. But the work of BTC, which as you would know, is a private company, has been commendable. I mean, immediately after the passage of Hurricane Joaquin, BTC discovered 59 cell sites offline, negatively impacting 59 communities in the central and southern Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that today that the islands affected by the hurricane are up and running, with the exception of South Long Island, where some cell sites are down, for example, in Roses and Mortimers, and all of Acklands. There are poles that are down, and this is hampering the restoration of normal service. Also, fiber optic cables are also down. At the moment, there are no fixed internet services south of Clarenstown and Long Island, but work is progressing on this matter. In Acklands, Mr. Speaker, all sites are still down, and dishes have been destroyed. Residents of Lovely Bay and Chesters are able to make cellular calls using the site at Crooked Island. Also in Long Key, the dish on the tower needs to be realigned, and minor restoration work continues. Water and Sewage Corporation deployed assessment and disaster recovery teams to San Salvador, Long Island, Crooked Island, and Long Key and Acklands on Sunday, October 4th, immediately following the passage of Hurricane Joaquin, and the issuance of all clear from the Met Office. The following is the current status on the water supply of the affected areas. San Salvador. Normal operations at our Coburn Town desalination plant resumed on Friday, October 9th, using a large standby generator shipped to the island from New Providence early in the week. On Sunday, October 11th, the BEC power supply was restored. From Monday to Friday, the community was supplied via the Wellfield system, albeit with lower than normal system pressures. The water and sewage team on the island is thoroughly checking our distribution system to confirm that all customers are receiving water and that there are no visible leaks as a result of the passage of the hurricane. On Long Island, the Water and Sewage Corporation Sims desalination plant and water supply to the community was reactivated since Saturday, October 3rd, after the restoration of BEC's power supply. The Deadman's Key desalination plant, which supplies all of central Long Island, was reactivated on Monday, October 5th, using the on-site standby generator. A few customers, approximately 20, remained off due to the severe damage at their homes and possible leakage. The Water and Sewage Corporation deployed a 4-man team on Wednesday, October 7th, with additional vehicles to assist with the urgent location of all systems and leaks and their repair. Their work is complete, and they are returning to New Providence today. The Water and Sewage Corporation resumed tankered water supply on Monday, October 12th, using our 2 water tanker trucks. On Crooked Island, Water and Sewage Corporation was able to reactivate the Colonel Hill Wellfield water supply system on a limited basis using a standby generator for power supply on Thursday, October 8th. BEC restored power to the Long Key desalination plant on Saturday, October 10th, and water supply to the community was restored shortly thereafter. Prior to Saturday, the community was supplied via the remaining water in the storage tanks on site. The Water and Sewage Corporation is procuring a water tanker truck and hopes to deploy it to Crooked Island early next week. This truck will be used to transport water to residents from the various temporary desalination operations being set up on the island. Water and Sewage Corporation is also finalizing plans for a new desalination plant at Colonel Hill. A contract for the supply disposal wells is being finalized, and the procurement of the desalination plant, full standby generator, and storage tanks is in progress. It is anticipated that the well drilling equipment will be shipped to Crooked Island early next week. And I will come back to this, Mr. Speaker, but Crooked Island has also been greatly enhanced by the capacity of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force to supply a mobile camp in which integrated services are being provided on desalinated water for the island. They have the capacity to provide the island with desalinated water where that camp is situated just outside Landrill Point. In Acklins, the SNUG, and for that matter, this camp is able to produce 250 meals a day. It has a mobile clinic where doctors could do minor surgical examinations and interventions. It has all of the generating capacity. Mr. Speaker, it has beds, and it is, in fact, an integrated camp that has been now situated on Crooked Island to enable the Defense Force officers positioned there to effectively carry out their tasks. The Acklins, the Snug Corner Masons Bay desalination plant was reactivated on Monday, October 5th, following the restoration of BEC's power supply. The Hard Hill tank system is being supplied from Snug Corner and Masons Bay. The Salina Point desalination plant was reactivated on Tuesday, October 13th, following the restoration of BEC's power supply. In the interim, residents were supplied by a gravity feed from the limited water supply in the storage tanks. BEC power supply to the Chester's Lovely Bay Wellfield was restored on Wednesday, October 7th, and water supply to Chester's was restored soon thereafter. It is reported that approximately 1 mile of water pipeline to Lovely Bay was substantially damaged when the causeway was washed away. Water and Sewage Corporation is actively reviewing options as to how best to supply Lovely Bay in the interim while a determination is made with respect to the reconstruction of the causeway. And the reconstruction teams are in Lovely Bay now making their assessments. Meg Warner. Our on-island staff has reported that BEC's power supply to the Pirates Well Betsy Bay Wellfield water supply system is on and supplying water to the residents. They also reported no damage to the new desalination plants on the island, which are being readied for commissioning in the coming weeks in Abrahams Bay and Pirates Well Betsy Bay. The Water and Sewage Corporation will take emergency steps to ensure that potable water is made easily available at all of our facilities in the affected islands for all persons in need of water to meet their personal and family requirements. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the Bahamas Electricity Corporation. I can report that reasonable progress is on the way as the corporation continues to restore power to impacted islands and keys. The Bahamas Electricity Corporation has restored supply to approximately 80% of customers impacted by Hurricane Joaquin. San Salvador, Acklins, Crooked Island, Long Key, Rum Key, and Long Island were hardest hit by Hurricane Joaquin, and the progress of restoration work in these islands is as follows. Acklands restoration is complete. Long Key restoration complete. Rumkey restoration work began on Rumkey on Saturday, October 17, 2015, and the majority of BEC's 87 customers on the island have had their supplies restored. Supply restoration was delayed prior to Saturday after the dock on the island was badly damaged during the storm. Once repairs to the dock were complete, a vessel transported necessary supplies to the island on Saturday, October 17th, and crews were flown in to begin work immediately. Repairs to BEC supply to buildings were completed on Saturday, simultaneous with pole platting, which continues in the affected communities. BEC expects full restoration in Rumkey before the end of this week. San Salvador. There are 570 BEC customers on the island of San Salvador, and supply has been restored to more than 80% of those customers. So far, on the southern end of the island, supply has been restored to most communities, with work remaining in just 2 areas. In the north, supply has been restored to all communities except United Estates, where work is scheduled to begin soon. BEC estimates that restoration on San Salvador will be completed by early next week. Long Island. BEC continues to make good progress on the southern end of the island, which suffered the most damage following Hurricane Joaquin. Electricity supply has been restored as far south as Clarencetown, with pole planting and overhead line work continuing towards those communities south of this area. Crooked Island. Restoration work is expected to commence soon after Category 4 Hurricane Joaquin destroyed the corporation's generation and distribution networks on the island. Some supplies have already been shipped to the island, and other resources, including temporary housing for work crews, are expected to reach the island soon. BEC teams in the Family Islands continue to receive assistance from teams from New Providence, as well as CARELEC, the Caribbean Association of Electric Utilities members. CARELEC teams include Grand Bahama Power and Light, U.S. Virgin Island Water and Power Authority, and the corporation itself. The government of the Bahamas is very grateful to the kind assistance from these agencies, both local and from overseas. Family Island airports. The Department of Civil Aviation has confirmed that all airports in the islands affected by Hurricane Joaquin are opened for normal operations, although some terminal buildings suffered damages. The last to be reopened was Deadman's Key Airport, which opened for service on Friday, 9th of October 2015. The Department of Civil Aviation is continuing to carry out assessments on the conditions of the airports in the affected areas with a view towards any immediate remediation that may be necessary. Actions by the central government. Mr. Speaker, the central government, by necessity, is compelled to play a vital role in the coordination in terms of the relief, restoration, and recovery efforts, and I would now like to detail some of the actions of the central government over the last 3 weeks. First and foremost, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, has played a vital and pivotal role in terms of the first response to what all would describe as an acute emergency situation. Despite all of the inherent difficulties caused by the rapidity and suddenness of this agency has responded well and must be so commended. NEMA has now shifted the National Emergency Operations Center level of activation, Mr. Speaker, to partial comprising of essential services representation of the National Disaster Committee. NEMA will continue to focus on communications between the NEOC Family Island administrators, technicians on the ground, and members of impacted communities. They continue to improve as BDC restores service. And of course, coordination of national response efforts continue. Scheduled national press briefings by ministry heads will continue to be held on Mondays and Thursdays, excluding holidays, and these will be held daily at headquarters on Gladstone Road, New Providence, for the duration of the restoration, recovery, and reconstruction phases. NEMA will be the sole agency responsible for receiving cash donations on behalf of the government of the Bahamas and will oversee its disbursement in a transparent and accountable manner. And Mr. Speaker, just let me say with respect to fundraising that I have invited Mr. Nat Benaby of the Royal Bank of Canada, Mr. Jean Chalapan, the chairman of the board of Deltec Bank, Mr. Tracy Knowles, a retired partner of KPMG, Mr. Gowan Bowe, Mr. Speaker, of a partner of PricewaterhouseCoopers, to, in fact, Mr. Speaker, superintend and direct the fundraising efforts for NEMA. This has happened in the past, Mr. Speaker, and I would expect that they will take responsibility for the monies and accounting for how those monies are spent. Not just a question of doing what is right, but being seen to do what is right. So in my capacity as the Minister of Finance, on the 6th of October 2015, under the powers vested in me under Chapter 98 and pursuant to the provisions of the Tariff Code 9817.0000, I declared an exigency order for the purpose of exemption for specific goods intended for the relief to the impacted residents for the islands of Acklins, Cat Island, Crooked Island, Exuma, Ragged Island, Inagua, Long Island, Maguana, Rumkey, Samanaki, and San Salvador. This exigency order would allow the islands so listed to be permitted to import goods specified in the order for a period of 90 days commencing on the 3rd of October 2015. In addition, the Ministry of Finance informed the public that to clear such goods, duty and value-added tax-free importers will be required to complete, or the importers will be required to complete a special form that can be obtained for all ports of entry that the Bahamas Customs C-13 form will still be required. And word free. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Customs will be putting additional officers in place to assist with direct clearance of goods and processing of exigency requests. The Ministry of Finance will put procedures in place to refund duty and VAT on goods purchased locally under the exigency orders. So, Mr. Speaker, for the convenience of citizens of the Bahamas who are affected and who will take advantage of this, any local purchases, Mr. Speaker, will be taking into consideration and the system put in place to allow those purchases to be duty-free. So, Mr. Speaker, we believe that these measures will go a long way in the restoration of the communities affected, and particularly will be of great assistance to business and commercial entities in being able to be up and running in the shortest possible time. In order to provide a long-term point of coordination for the long recovery and restoration, which will involve the restoration of public infrastructure, housing, and other government installations, the government has established a new unit. A new unit was established by the government of the Bahamas on Thursday last week to enhance the response recovery and restoration efforts of all government agencies in the wake of Hurricane Joaquin. The new unit is located in the Penn's building on Tonique Williams-Darling Highway. The unit is coordinated by Mr. Jack Thompson, Senior Undersecretary in the Office of the Prime Minister. In addition, Ms. Melanie Roach, former Director of Public Works, has been appointed as the Technical Coordinator, and Mrs. Barbara Burrows, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Social Services, has also joined that team. Ms. Roach, along with a technical team of engineers and architects, and let me say from both the public and private sector, will give special focus to house repairs and the reconstruction of new homes. Mrs. Burrows heads the non-technical assessment teams, while Mr. Thompson will provide administrative oversight of the unit. The unit will officially launch its telephone numbers and email address tomorrow. The telephone numbers are 323-4281 and 323-4282. 323-4281 and 323-4282. Its email line is nrru@bahamas.gov.bs. nrru@bahamas.gov.bs. Mr. Speaker, additionally, a dedicated website, OperationRecovery242.com, has been established in addition to other forms of communication to keep the community fully abreast of the recovery and restoration efforts. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Social Services has been very proactive in providing and coordinating relief on the ground in the islands affected. In the immediate aftermath of the hurricane, and as soon as the all clear was given, the Department of Social Services deployed 4 teams consisting of 14 social workers to conduct rapid initial damage assessments and assist with distribution of food and water to the severely affected islands of the Bahamas. On Sunday, 4th of October 2015, as follows. Rum Cay. The team was able to conduct assessments on 29 homes in Rum Cay. They were unable to process any of the winter residents whose homes may have been affected. They are compiling data on the number of residents by gender. However, there were 10 school-age children. The team returned to New Providence on Thursday, 8th of October 2015. In San Salvador, the team assessed 216 homes and counted 62 unoccupied homes. There are 227 students on the island. However, 5 have been relocated to New Providence. The team returned to New Providence on Saturday, 10th of October 2015. At Crooked Island, the team processed 25 homes. There are 7 homes remaining in Long Key, which had 24 persons. There are 16 persons who remain in the clinic as their homes are inhabitable. Long-term accommodations need to be identified for them as the other residents whose homes were destroyed or severely damaged. The team returned to New Providence on Thursday, 8th of October 2015, and with respect to temporary homes, we are expecting to begin taking delivery of those homes that are container-led and context homes, Mr. Speaker. They have been ordered, they are coming in, and I would imagine start to be coming in as early as this weekend for dispatch to various areas in the country. Acklins. The team completed 107 assessments. This does not include the persons whose homes were destroyed. They are in the process of compiling their data. The team returned to New Providence on Friday, 9th of October 2015. Long Island. The team for Long Island was deployed on Monday, 5th of October 2015. The team reported that the island was severely impacted, which resulted in many homes being destroyed. It was difficult for the social workers to obtain an accurate count of all of the families and homes that were affected by Hurricane Joaquin. However, the team was continuing to process and compile information on the number of men, women, and children affected. Teams continue to assess damaged dwelling homes and provide assistance to impacted and displaced families. In terms of private homes that were destroyed, the Department of Social Services has reported the following. Acklins 123, Crooked Island 50, Rum Cay 23, San Salvador 227, Long Island 413. I'll just repeat those numbers. In terms of private homes that were destroyed, and Mr. Speaker, Acklins 123, and I'm assuming in varying degrees of severity, Crooked Island 50, Rumkey 23, San Salvador 227, Long Island 413. This is a continuing exercise, and based on their findings, the government will respond in kind as a part of the work of the National Restoration and Recovery Unit. This will be done in the shortest possible time, as the primary consideration of my government is to house and restore the physical comforts of our citizens. And Mr. Speaker, I met personally yesterday with the leaders of these teams and the engineers from the Ministry of Works and all sectors of the government, and with a view to indicating to them the intention of the government, Mr. Speaker, is to restore these matters in the shortest possible time, and that we want to have a comprehensive approach to restoration, not one island at a time, but all islands at the same time. And so, Mr. Speaker, I expect as these teams come in, that works will commence. In fact, works in some islands have already commenced, Mr. Speaker. The Ministry of Health, the Department of Public Health, health relief assessment teams were deployed to Acklands, Crooked Island, Long Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. On Sunday, October 4th, 2015, 7 nurses, 5 doctors. Monday, October 5th, 1 doctor, 1 nurse. Wednesday, October 7th, 2 doctors. Thursday, October 8th, 2 additional doctors. Saturday, October 10th, 6 nurses. Sunday, October 11th, 9 nurses, 3 doctors. Medical supplies, which include vaccines and equipment, are continuously being distributed to the affected islands as of October 5th. Nursing staff rotation is conducted on a weekly basis, and doctors rotating every 3 or 4 days. This is done in order, Mr. Speaker, for the medical teams to have some downtime before redeployment. On the Department of Environmental Health Services, the department has deployed several teams throughout the impacted islands to carry out a number of sanitation exercises for the control of waterborne diseases and other related issues that might arise due to the standing water residents might come in contact with. The teams will rotate every 2 weeks in the initial stages. Teams are comprised of vector control officers and health inspectors. Teams have already begun addressing vector issues through treatment of standing water and fogging. Additional equipment and insecticides have been sent to all impacted islands. In collaboration with the Water and Sewage Corporation, the Department of Environmental Health Services is also addressing disinfection of private water storage and catchment facilities. Advice is also being given to the community on the treatment and methods for contaminated waters to be used for bathing. Teams are also advising local government officials and the community with respect to management of debris and dead animals. Wherever possible, wood and vegetative debris are being separated with the intention of further processing. Ministry of Education. Mr. Speaker, I'm able to report this morning that from the onset, the Ministry of Education was proactive in its approach and implemented a strategic and systematic plan to address the repair and restoration of schools on the islands affected. The Director of Education has also indicated to me, Mr. Speaker, outstanding work by communities in being able to restore some of their schools. Mr. Speaker, one of our primary concerns is that of the role of schools in our family islands, communities. There is an imperative for schools to be operational as quickly as possible in order to prevent the further death of the community. We must be concerned that once students began to migrate to the capital or elsewhere, it could pose challenges for them to return, and thus an entire community could be compromised. Mindful of this fact and well aware that many students had already begun relocating to New Providence and other islands and requesting enrollment in schools, the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology took aggressive action to begin the repair restoration process. As we assess the damages to many of our educational infrastructure, I'm able to report that on Long Island that 5 schools will be operational this week. Both high schools open this week. NG M Major resume classes on Monday, 19th of October, and North Long Island High has been open since Wednesday, 14th of October, 2015. Additionally, Lower Deadman's Key Primary, Sims Primary School will open on Wednesday, October 21st, and Clinton's opened on Wednesday, October 14th, 2015. The students from Morrisville Primary School will be temporarily relocated to Lower Deadman's Key Primary, and the Mangrove Bush Primary School, which sustained severe water damage, will have to be accommodated at temporary facilities until repairs to the school are completed. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the quick restoration and repairs to the NGM Major High School, I would wish to publicly thank the Long Island community, the contractors, and the community for their swift response in repairing the high school so that classes can resume as quickly as possible with the least disruption to the students who attended that school. Of course, the government will continue to repair Mr. Speaker, all the remaining schools and all do such necessary upgrades that is required to all of the facilities. I wish to mention the state of the schools on the remaining islands. Mr. Speaker, schools in Maguana are open. The school in Inagua is open. The school in Long Key sustained minor damages and is open. In Acklands, Mr. Speaker, the Lovely Bay School and Salina Point Primary Schools are severely damaged, and Snug Corner Primary School suffered roof damage and are all closed. The Acklands High School is expected to be open next week. Mr. Speaker, the Crooked Island High School and the Ulrich Ferguson Primary School both sustained roof damage, and those schools are being repaired by a private citizen who contacted the Director of Education to complete the necessary repairs, not just by providing materials needed, but also the labor. Another wonderful display, Mr. Speaker, of community. In San Salvador, Mr. Speaker, the students of United Estates Primary will return to school today, 21st of October 2015, thanks in part to the Seventh-day Adventist Church that is providing facilities, 2 grades at the local church. The San Salvador High School will remain closed until next week, as repairs are now taking place and will be completed by next week. Mr. Speaker, Rumkey All-Age School, as you know, was undergoing major renovations prior to the storm, and the students were already being facilitated at a local church on the island. This system will remain in place until those renovations are completed, and those renovations really are constituting a new building, Mr. Speaker, and without saying much, this is the school that Milo Bolton Butler would have gone to. That is being renovated and re-engineered in an amazing way. Aspects of Mr. Speaker, with respect to the restoration and recovery of vital infrastructure, the Ministry of Works and Urban Planning has completed its initial survey of damages. Yeah, that doesn't flow. Had completed its initial survey of damages to the government infrastructure, including roads, causeways, and bridges, and other government installations, including schools, clinics, official residences, etc. And this report is in hand and being analyzed and reviewed for further action. As to the other infrastructural concerns, I have mentioned that the Recovery and Reconstruction Unit will have some specific concerns regarding the restoration of housing, and on Tuesday, 20th of October, 5 teams traveled to conduct detailed assessments of government buildings and infrastructure as follows. Representatives of Civil Aviation Department, the Architectural Studio with J.D. Chisholm and Associates, quantity surveyors, and 2 photographers from BIS went to assess the airport terminal buildings at Acklands, Crooked Island, San Salvador, and Deadman's Key, Long Island. 4 teams made up of representatives of the Ministry of Works Integrated Building Supplies, IBS, and Caribbean Coastal Services, Island Design and Development Company, went to Acklands, Crooked Island, Long Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador to complete detailed assessments of government buildings and infrastructure. The teams will return to Nassau on Wednesday, today, 21st of October, and will prepare scopes of works and designs where necessary for the repair or reconstruction of government buildings and infrastructure. With the help of the Ministry of Works, lists of qualified contractors, both in the various family islands and in New Providence, are being compiled to assist with the repair and reconstruction of government buildings and infrastructure. The Ministry of Social Services has been provided with the house assessment list. The Ministry of Social Services has provided a house-to-house assessment list of residences in Acklands, Crooked Island, Long Key, Rumkey, and San Salvador. Yeah. So staff from the Ministry of Housing are currently reviewing the assessments and compiling lists of building materials required for repairs. On Thursday, 22nd of October, 3 consulting engineers will travel to Long Island to conduct a survey of the residential structural damages. Arrangements will be made for technical teams to travel to Rumkey, Acklands, and Crooked Island for review of structural damages to residences. With the assistance of these units, NEMA is resourcing building supplies which will be shipped to the family islands to be distributed to persons who have requested and qualified for assistance with building materials only for Mr. Speaker, what should be said here is that the government of the Bahamas will do whatever is necessary when it comes down to building. And let me say that as a result of Hurricane Francis and Jean, Mr. Speaker, I think it's around 2005, 17 homes were built in San Salvador of a special kind of wood, and those homes remained virtually intact throughout Hurricane Joaquin. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force will assist with some of the smaller repairs, Mr. Speaker, and we are compiling a list of contractors and skilled construction craftsmen in the various islands who will be able to assist with labor for repairs. NEMA has purchased 5 recreational vehicles. These are homes on wheels, which can accommodate 3 adults or 2 adults and 2 children, and 7 mobile trailer homes, which can accommodate between 6 to 10 persons. These will be assigned to temporarily house local families and government employees, nurses, teachers, police, etc., who have been displaced due to the destruction of their homes or rental units, while construction of permanent replacement residence of repair of rental units will take place. That's another correction. The technical staff of the Disaster Recovery and Reconstruction Unit, with the help of other government agencies, is compiling the list of homes that will have to be constructed to accommodate those persons whose homes were destroyed and have no source of permanent shelter. The Department of Housing has provided designs of housing constructed following previous hurricanes. However, the foundation designs have to be adjusted to account for higher flood levels experienced during Hurricane Joaquin. Local contractors will be given the opportunity to construct the homes in the various islands. It is expected that there will be a close liaison between all of these engineering teams to ensure that there is no overlapping, and more importantly, that nothing falls between the cracks. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force will continue to play a strategic role in the restoration and recovery efforts. To date, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force continues to have teams deployed in support of ground cleanup efforts, roof repair operations in impacted islands. However, as matters have progressed, the force have placed emphasis on restoration of critical infrastructure, namely main supply routes, power generators, medical and law enforcement facilities, local stores and pharmacies, etc. The force is responsible for NEMA's warehouse, Arawak Port, Nassau, with respect to receiving, oh, you got some there? The Defense Force is responsible for NEMA's warehouse or warehouses with respect to receiving, storing, security, and issuing of supplies for onward transmission to affected areas. I am pleased to note that on the 15th of October 2015, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force activated Mobile Base City, a mobile base city operation which provides living accommodations, a medical facility, power generation, a feeding and utility bay, as well as a reverse osmosis system and a NEMA truck in Crooked Island. Notwithstanding the aforementioned, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force is being supported by the ship's company delivery of supplies and equipment, together with prosecution of the littoral of the southern Bahamas. Conclusion. Mr. Speaker, I could not end this communication without thanking the people of the Bahamas for their generosity in giving to the victims of Hurricane Joaquin. The response was rapid and magnanimous. The response continues to pour in from all sectors of our society. Just this morning, Mr. Speaker, I was delayed somewhat to receive a check of $250,000, again another donation that was passed on to NEMA. Well, when I received it with Captain Russell. The response, Mr. Speaker, is both in kind and in cash. And NEMA continues to receive and to appeal for donations of cash at this time. The international community in particular, Mr. Speaker, various regional agencies and governments have responded quickly without specific requests being made. And particular mention must be made of the role of the British Navy and the United States Northern Command in the post-hurricane relief efforts. I wish to announce also this morning that NEMA has received notification through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that the Japanese government, through the Japanese aid program, has made a grant of $1.7 million to assist with disaster recovery. And here I would like to single out also, Mr. Speaker, the work of SEDEMA. And for the purpose of that, the Japanese government, Mr. Speaker, making a donation of disaster preparedness and response equipment, and with immediate effect. But Mr. Speaker, I would also like to take this opportunity to single out the work of SEDEMA, CARELEC, PAHO, and the OAS in terms of their immediate response to our situation. Mr. Speaker, there yet remains a tremendous amount of work ahead of us. Our purpose is to restore human comfort to those who have been displaced, to restore vital infrastructure such as telecommunications, electricity, and water, to begin the restoration of vital infrastructure, and to begin rebuilding homes, schools, and clinics. And to do all of these things, Mr. Speaker, taking into consideration the lessons learned from the hurricane in its various manifestations. I said in the opening of this communication that this must be an integrated effort. We have made a commendable start to this process, and we will not relent until the restoration and recovery, Mr. Speaker, is 100% completed. And Mr. Speaker, for the purposes of this, I received a letter from the Leader of the Opposition indicating the Opposition's preparedness to join the government in a joint fundraising effort, Mr. Speaker, aimed at hurricane relief for the islands. And Mr. Speaker, it is a matter that I thought I should commend, Mr. Speaker, because to the extent that we are able to engage in such activities where the colors are not evident, Mr. Speaker, that colors being of the political parties not evident, to that extent, Mr. Speaker, we are, I think, consolidating the levels of maturity in our country, and most certainly being seen by the people of this country to do the right thing. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Right Honourable Member. Ordered that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. Chair recognizes the honourable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the 19th of October, 2015, the Nassau Guardian, under the pen of that newspaper's managing editor, ran a banner headline titled, "Radar Was Not Working," with a subline saying, forecasters, warning did not come soon enough. This is the paper, Mr. Speaker. In this newspaper article, the managing editor of the Nassau Guardian quotes and adopts a number of unnamed forecasters variously suggesting that the Bahamas' Doppler radar was not working during the passage of Hurricane Joaquin, or claims that the alerts and warnings relative to that hurricane's approach to the Bahamas were not issued in a timely fashion, thereby putting at risk the Bahamian people. In that same publication, Mr. Speaker, newspaper publication, there were two additional articles placed in a section of that newspaper called the National Review. Do I have it here? The National Review. In that National Review, there are two articles. The first of those pieces was titled, quote, "Did P.M. Christie Mislead House?" And the second piece was titled, "Life or Death," both under the pen of the managing editor of the Nassau Guardian. In the first of these editorial pieces, the managing editor of the Nassau Guardian states that the Prime Minister, the member for Centerville, misled Parliament and therefore the Bahamian people when he spoke in this honorable House and said that the televised claim by a commentator on the United States cable weather channel that the Bahamas did not have a radar that was working during the passage of Hurricane Joaquin was untrue, and further, that the Prime Minister's statement in this House that at all material times during the passage of the Hurricane Joaquin, the country's Doppler radar was operational, was also untrue. The Nassau Guardian's managing editor sought to advance in her writings that contrary to what the Prime Minister said in this House, the Doppler radar was not operating during the storm, and that what was asserted by the American commentator on the Weather Channel was in fact true, and that further, that by the alleged failure of the Doppler radar, the Department of Meteorology failed in its duties and obligations in issuing warnings, and the Bahamian people were put at risk. The premise of these several articles in last Monday's Nassau Guardian, therefore, are threefold. First, that the Doppler radar was not operational during the passage of the hurricane. Second, that this alleged non-operation led to a lapse in warnings to the Bahamian people. And further, that the Prime Minister misled this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, these are very serious allegations, especially in light of the devastation suffered in the southeastern islands of our country. These allegations are all the more serious, Mr. Speaker, because they are not true. First, Mr. Speaker, the managing editor of the Nassau Guardian, to substantiate and or formulate these allegations, relies primarily upon a posting dated October 2nd, 1:21 a.m. by a forecaster into the department's logbook saying as follows: "Major storm Joaquin is over the Bahamas and the Doppler radar is not working. The Met Lab is not working. No hurricane supplies. No bus. When will we get it right in the Bahamas?" Mr. Speaker, the Department of Meteorology maintains two records in the forecaster's office. The first is the department's operational checklist. It is stated on this checklist that the purpose of this list is to ensure that tools and equipment necessary to produce meteorological products and services are functioning according to standards. The second record is a logbook which is maintained to record any incident of significance occurring during the course of the day. To support her various assertions in the several pieces on the Department of Meteorology in last Monday's publication, the managing editor of the Nassau Guardian references and cross-references the logbook and the operational checklist. It is interesting, however, that in the instance of this particular posting in the logbook, dated the 2nd of October, where it speaks about the Doppler and the bus, there is no corroborating cross-reference of the operational checklist by the managing editor. Mr. Speaker, a review of the operational checklist for the 2nd of October, when the posting was made in the logbook, discloses no reference to the radar not operating. In fact, the instrument checklist shows that on the 1st of September, in the hours before this logbook entry, and October, the 1st of October, in the hours before this logbook entry, and on the 2nd of October, the day of the logbook entry, that the Doppler radar was, in fact, operating. Mr. Speaker, I am compelled to say further that the forecaster who entered the logbook posting in the early hours of the 2nd of October was known to the managing editor, in that he was the subject of an opinion piece in the National Review of the 5th of October, wherein the managing editor castigates the forecaster for a social media posting, in this instance, that in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Joaquin, there were multiple deaths in Long Island, as many as 30 people, and that 8 deaths had already been confirmed. The managing editor described in that review the same forecaster's posting, and these are her words, as irresponsible and as fueling hysteria. Mr. Speaker, we believe the managing editor can now add they were untrue. However, in reliance on this log entry from this forecaster, and with no corroboration from the official internal record, the managing editor laid her foundation through the journalistic medium to accuse the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas of misleading Parliament. In fact, the journalist asked in her writing, and I quote, whether we, the Bahamian people, can ever trust anything the Prime Minister says. Bear in mind her source now. The managing editor of the Nassau Guardian asked, who, if anyone, caused the Prime Minister to mislead the Bahamian people? Did someone knowingly give Christie bogus information? Mr. Speaker, the managing editor, also in support of this accusation of misleading Parliament, leveled at the Prime Minister, seems to place reliance upon the utterances of a Weather Channel commentator who, during the height of the storm over our country, claimed that the Bahamas did not have a working radar. Under the heading in her piece, "A Bad Time Not to Have a Radar," which is a direct quotation from this commentator. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, I wish to acknowledge and thank the Minister of Tourism, the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, and his Senior Director of Communications, Mrs. Mia Langvish, who contacted the Weather Channel to demand an immediate retraction. By email correspondence to Mrs. Vish-Lang, Ms. Shirley Powell, Executive Vice President and Chief Communications Officer of the Weather Channel, expressed the following as a retraction, which we accepted. And this is a quote. While reporting on Hurricane Joaquin, one of our on-camera meteorologists stated that the Bahamas radar system was not working. In fact, it was the system that provides the Weather Channel access to the radar that was not working. We cannot independently verify whether or not the radar itself was functioning at the time. We regret the error. Mr. Speaker, the access that the Weather Channel speaks of us not working relates to access granted on a commercial basis by contractual arrangement. No such contractual arrangement was in place between the Department of Meteorology and the Weather Channel. That is what they were referring to. The managing editor, however, Mr. Speaker, in the midst of these allegations and in apparently seeking corroboration for her allegation, claims that the department's consultant engineer, who is responsible for maintenance of the radar, in response to the posting by the forecaster where it says the Doppler ain't working, went to the forecast office to repair the radar. Mr. Speaker, The truth is that the consultant engineer visited the forecast office on the evening of the 1st of October, before the log notation, and on a date when the official record shows the radar was operating. The record shows that it was working. He did so, however, Mr. Speaker, at the instance of the Director of Meteorology and myself, both of whom were at that moment at the NEMA headquarters when social media postings, apparently precipitated by the Weather Channel commentators' erroneous words, went viral, claiming that the Doppler radar was not operating. The engineer soon confirmed by telephone that he was at the site and that the radar was in fact operating. The only notation, Mr. Speaker, of the radar not being operable was made on the 28th of September at 11:59 p.m. when the on-duty forecaster noted that it was not operating. And Mr. Speaker, it's important that to note that when the radar is mentioned in this checklist, it refers to the computer monitor that receives the radar. The radar is located in a completely different location from where forecasters are posted. When queried, when the forecaster was queried on this particular notation, I'm advised that I'm advised that the on-duty forecaster reported that the monitor displayed ground clutter, which I am advised is something caused by interference from other radars from time to time. I'm advised that no action was taken, and by the following shift, the radar is noted as operational. It was within this context that the Department of Meteorology issued a statement asserting that the Doppler radar was operating throughout the progress of the storm and that assertions to the contrary were untrue. Mr. Speaker, the second premise for the multiple stories in last Monday's edition of the Nassau Guardian is the supposed non-operation of the Doppler radar when the storm was over the Bahamas, placed the Bahamian people at risk, and that Bahamians in the southeast and central Bahamas were not warned about the storm in a timely fashion. The managing editor of the Nassau Guardian goes further and says that on October 2nd, as Joaquin lashed the south and central Bahamas, forecasters exchanged computer images of the storm, purportedly showing no showers or echoes on the radar. The journalist then asserts definitively, and I quote, "This points to a radar that is not operating properly." And that's the journalist's words. Mr. Speaker, just yesterday I was in a meeting with international persons from a commercial meteorological entity, one of whom asked this question: why would a forecaster expect to see showers or echoes emanating from islands between 20 and 110 miles outside of the radar's effective range? Mr. Speaker, I ask, why would a journalist assert, as a matter of fact, that storm activity out of the radar's effective range, and therefore not evidence on that radar, was evidence of a radar not operating properly? Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas' Doppler radar has an effective range of 150 miles radius. It provides details within that range of rainfall intensity, thunderstorms, and tornadic activity, including waterspouts, and is therefore an essential tool when used in its effective range. Other tools, however, are also used by the department to observe, forecast, and track storms throughout the archipelago, including satellite imagery, the lightning detection network, computer modeling from a variety of official international sources. Mr. Speaker, embedded in the managing editor of the Nassau Guardian's writings last Monday is the assertion that the department failed to properly advise Bahamians of the advance of this storm. Mr. Speaker, this is perhaps one of the most unfortunate of all assertions by this journalist. Speaker, I wish to lay on the table of this House an email from James L. Franklin, the branch chief hurricane specialist unit of the National Hurricane Center, to Trevor Baston, the director of the meteorology department. Speaker, in that email, he says the following, and this is from the National Hurricane Center, and I'll explain what the center is in the context of the Bahamas very shortly. Hurricane Joaquin posed some very difficult forecast challenges, and the National Hurricane Center's forecast errors for this storm were much larger than normal. When Joaquin formed on the evening of the 27th of September, our available track model guidance called for a west-northwestward or northwestward motion away from the Bahamas. And the initial National Hurricane Center official forecast followed that reasoning. By the afternoon of the 28th, one model, the European model, suggested a close approach to the northwestern Bahamas, with the remainder of the typically good-performing guidance still indicating a track well to the north. The first National Hurricane Center official forecast to show a close approach to the central Bahamas was issued at 5 p.m. on September 29th, and your office meaning the Bahamas Department of Meteorology, issued a hurricane watch for the central Bahamas 6 hours later. Joaquin continued to move farther to the south than expected, however, passing very close to Crooked Island in the southeastern Bahamas on the 1st of October. The National Hurricane Center's track forecasts during this period were far less accurate than normal. The National Hurricane Center official track forecast issued 3 days prior to the 1200 Universal Time Coordinate on the 1st of October, when Joaquin moved very close to Crooked Island, had a 72-hour forecast error of 536 nautical miles, which is far higher than our average 72-hour error of 113 nautical miles. The 48-hour forecast issued 2 days prior had an error of 180 nautical miles, again, far worse than the average error of 77 nautical miles. And the 24-hour forecast issued 1 day prior had an error of 62 miles, compared to the average error of 45 miles. The National Hurricane Center's intensity forecast during this period also had very large errors. The 3-day forecast, varying at 1200 Universal Time Coordinates on the 1st of October, was low by 75 knots. The 2-day forecast was low by 55 knots, in other words, underestimated. And the 1-day forecast was low by 25 knots. Note that all of these verification numbers are based on a preliminary best track, and that our final numbers will be slightly different. We are still evaluating why the guidance models were so slow to forecast the southward component of motion. Joaquin was in an environment of strong northerly shear, and our initial reasoning was this shear would keep the cyclone weak, and that a weaker system would move away from the Bahamas with a lower level flow. However, Joaquin was able to resist the shear and maintain a much more coherent vertical structure, and this likely contributed to the more southward track. Anticipating how a tropical cyclone is going to respond to a highly sheared environment remains, unfortunately, one of our most vexing forecast challenges. Regards, James L. Franklin, Branch Chief, Hurricane Specialist Unit, National Hurricane Center. And I will lay this on the table, Speaker. Speaker, the National Hurricane Center, from which I just read, is one of 6 regional specialized meteorological centers, RSMCs, which has regional responsibility under the World Meteorological Organization for the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, North Atlantic, and Western North Pacific Oceans. The Bahamas, therefore, will be in close collaboration with the Miami Hurricane Center during the passage of a storm over and through its territory. They are the official trackers under the World Meteorological Organization. The first level basic information comprises reliable information from a clearly defined source on the tropical cyclone's location and size and its present and forecast movement and intensity. And where available, the entity summaries of the official national warnings may be included in a national advisory. So a national advisory would draw upon what is done by the National Hurricane Center. Speaker, I have been advised by Mr. Franklin, who I just read from, the branch manager, that the senior officials of the Bahamas Department of Meteorology strongly advised the Miami Hurricane Center to issue warnings for the southeastern Bahamas, the area which became the absolute focus of Hurricane Joaquin, and ultimately that the Bahamas took the unilateral decision, and we now know it was the correct decision. To issue the alerts and warnings. For this, the department earned the commendation of Mr. Ronald Jackson, the director of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency and the National Hurricane Center. But here in the Bahamas, the managing director of the Nassau Guardian has chosen instead to recriminate and accuse. Mr. Speaker, managing editor. Speaker, I have always felt that this should have been the focus of any story in the light of what has happened in our country. Instead, the department has been brought into public disrepute and has been forced to defend itself, and now the Prime Minister has been drawn into the mire. Mr. Speaker, in order to put the case for the department in the face of these acts and in the face of this journalistic onslaught, I call it, a press conference was held at my ministry on the afternoon of last Monday, and I will lay on the table of this Parliament the press release. The following day, the Nassau Guardian carried the news conference under the following headings. This is it here. On the defensive. And there was an interesting addition to the Guardian on this occasion. I don't think I've seen it before. It's an opinion piece on the front page, and it was called A News Analysis. Interesting addition. And it had the headline, it's right here somewhere. Right here. I missed the point, sorry. On the defensive, Aviation Minister misses the point. News Analysis. The Speaker, this publication, and I'm going to get into it, but this publication on this occasion was in fulfillment of a social media posting the evening before by the managing editor, where she muses in a Facebook group in interaction with other posters called the Bahama Voice, and she says as follows: I think we need a special edition of National Review tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, the managing editor's response. Speaker, I hear some laughter, but you know, when you consider what we're talking about, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the managing editor's response to the press conference was to accuse me. Well, you may change that list after the PM. Mr. Speaker, the managing editor's response to the press conference was to accuse me of engaging in what she called attack mode, a classic PLP response. Not clear what my politics had to do with the article, Mr. Speaker, and the facts. She accuses me of being arrogant, and she says Glenys Hatter Martin ought to be less concerned about cleaning up a political mess and more concerned about protecting lives. Speaker, I invite members to review my press statement, where I sought to uphold, based on the facts, the integrity of the leaders of the department. Nothing to do with me. An important institution in our national life. The journalist accuses me, however, of attacking forecasters, as calling them incompetent, and I never use these words, Mr. Speaker, but this is what the summary says, that I attacked them, that I called them incompetent, that they were strangers to the truth, Speaker, I invite you and all members to review my comments when I lay it on the table. The issue in question, Speaker, however, is not the forecasters, as the managing editor is seeking to assert, but it is the managing editor of the Nassau Guardian who put out as fact in a daily newspaper that to the Bahamians and the world at large, and that they are expected to rely upon as reliable information. It was not only unreliable, but it was erroneous, Mr. Speaker. It is the managing editor of the Nassau Guardian, a seasoned journalist, who seeks now, and we look in the papers again today, where I won't show that one, but today again, 3 days now, who seeks to cleverly deflect from herself as a responsible journalist and place the spotlight on a forecaster, thus putting them on the defensive, Speaker, not the journalist who relied on a source and who must now stand or fall on that, Mr. Speaker. Very clever, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, just as there is accountability for politicians and for meteorologists, there is accountability for journalists. And that accountability is to enlighten democracy with truth and based on honest submission of information. Speaker, I want to close as follows with this summary. The Doppler radar was operating during the storm. The storm's activity when it hit the southeastern islands of the Bahamas was outside the effective range of that Doppler radar. The department uses other tools to track storms in those instances, which include satellite images and models by official international agencies, including the National Hurricane Center. The storm's Hurricane Joaquin's movement was difficult to track by the National Hurricane Center. But the Bahamas meteorologists warned our people when the official tracking body, the Hurricane Center, did not post warnings. The Prime Minister did not mislead this Parliament. Speaker, we have learned in a most difficult way that hurricanes are often unpredictable and frequently very destructive. We must have an enhanced sensitivity and apply a keen focus to the development of storms in our region that may potentially impact our country, in our region or in Africa. Whenever they form, we must be watching, Speaker. And I close by, Speaker, commending the officers of the Department of Meteorology, all of them, for their hard work and their commitment to the important work that they do on behalf of the Bahamian people. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up, and you'd indicated that there are other communications that you will table. Yeah. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama, yes?
If it's acceptable. I just wanted to, the minister indicated that the radar was working. However, she said the station that the forecasters may have been looking at may not have been working. I just wanted to get some clarification on that, whether that was, in fact, what I understood to be correct.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Member Fang.
What I said was that when, on the checklist, when the forecaster speaks to the radar, he's speaking to the monitor, not the radar itself. The radar is in a different location, so he doesn't have the ability to give a prognosis on the radar. He speaks to the monitor that is at his post. And that in the instance where it was noted that it was not operating, the forecaster indicated to the director, that on that occasion, when he said it was not operating, he was seeing what they call ground clutter. And I'm advised that ground clutter is often caused by interference from neighboring radars, and that it was resolved without intervention by any engineer, and that the next posting that we see on that, it was operational, noted to be operational, within hours.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Member for Fort Charlotte.
Through you. Obviously, this matter has become very contentious. I'm asking through you if the minister would state categorically that, as far as she is aware, there was complete operability of the radar equipment at the Met Department, sufficient to allay any concerns that there is, in fact, no cover-up on the part of the government with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Member for Anderson, you are under no obligation to.
Mr. Speaker, I just gave a very detailed, I think the member was there, a very detailed, you want me to give the summary again? I gave a very detailed, I'm still on my feet, please. I gave a very detailed response to the member's questions, and the suggestion of a cover-up, Speaker, you know, I find quite offensive.
It is. The member for Fort Charlotte, the chair will not allow any further interjections.
Mr. Speaker,
Because
that persons who work below the minister have clearly indicated that there was a failure of the radar equipment. It is their word against
Very
the
well.
minister.
Very
They
well.
are not here to defend themselves.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
And it is important to acknowledge
Thank you, Honorable
that
Member.
there is no...
Member, this is a bit out of order.
Member to come in here with his propaganda moments when he gets the microphone, and he does it quite a bit, Mr. Speaker. A lot of us don't get that kind of latitude, Speaker. But the assertion that I made in this Parliament are based on the facts that I will document when I lay in this Parliament, Speaker. And I have explained the source, primary source that the managing editor relied on. The other notation she relied on, which is the 28th of September, I think it was, I have explained that, Mr. Speaker. I don't think there was anything else in there. And then there were some suggestions about not seeing radar activity during, in the affected area. I've explained that you wouldn't see it. The question was asked of me, why would a forecaster expect to see that kind of activity in an area outside of the effective range of the radar? I think I answered, Speaker, and I don't think it's fair for the member for Fort Charlotte to try to throw aspersions from his place on the matter. I thought I went into quite a significant detail on the matter.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair is moving on, Honorable Member. The chair will not allow it. The chair will not allow it. Take your seat, Honorable Member. Member, you're not recognized. You're not recognized, Member. Further statements and communication by ministers? The chair recognizes Honorable Member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to announce that Diplomatic Week began on Sunday, this past Sunday, the 18th of October, and that all of our heads of mission are in Nassau for the annual convocation. Countries with resident and non-resident diplomats are also here for the week. I'm inviting all members of the House to come to this evening's opening reception, which is at 7 p.m. at the National Art Gallery. The gathering for the week is designed to let both our domestic and international audiences know what our position is in the international community, and so I hope that all members are able to make it. Secondly, I want to comment on a number of stories that have appeared in the press from the Grand Bahama Human Rights Association spokesman. And I first only want to make this general comment. I urge the public to approach the information from the source that they are getting it, to discount half of what you read as lacking credibility and take the rest with a grain of salt. The source is well known for exaggerations. Now, I intend to speak to the Jamaican foreign minister shortly with regard to allegations made in the press by one of his citizens about treatment in Nassau's jail and its detention facility. Those allegations, it seems, were also made in the courts, and I shall try to keep the public informed of the facts as we find them to be. The one thing that I would like to say as a general point again is that notwithstanding any lapses or errors that may be made or may have been made in our systems, the government of the Bahamas does not condone discrimination of any kind, inhumane treatment, assault on detainees, or abuse of any kind. There are systems in place, as we have seen, to deal with matters which require redress. They may need some tweaking to be more efficient, but the fact is they exist. As we have seen, for example, in the most recent case in the courts. The system for redress works. I would also urge legal counsel who run into these issues, which I think are largely lapses of an administrative nature, that they can freely call my office directly if there is any specific case that needs to be addressed. I'll be speaking with the prison officials to see if any complaint was ever made of the kind of abuse that is being reported in the Jamaican press during the incarceration of the individual who is now complaining. We must now try to get to the bottom of the facts. Lastly, I remind people that the source of these public utterances in the courts once urged citizens of this country to sue the government en masse in order to bankrupt the government. This seems to me to speak volumes about the true nature of the individual actor with whom we are dealing and to his credit or the lack thereof. I again thank the people of the Bahamas for their support of the policies on immigration, and I promise to keep the House informed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Fox Hill, you could order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Member for Angleton, you rose to your feet.
To bring to the Parliament, the Speaker's attention, it's just been brought to my attention that the member for Long Island purportedly is posting on social media, and I will quote, Hannah Martin now castigating the Nassau Guardian managing editor and throwing the Met officers under the bus. My Lord. Speaker, I hope that the department is listening to what the hopeful leader over there, or, in waiting, is seeking to achieve. She also speaks about the Parliament being disgracefully undemocratic, Speaker. But I just know what the rules are about this is a quotation attributed to Long Island Loretta Butler Turner. This Parliament is disgracefully undemocratic, so to speak. I just want to know what, it may be nothing, because I know you had an issue with taking photographs in here, and I'm just wondering whether what would not be acceptable in the Parliament is acceptable to be posted on Facebook from the Parliament, Speaker.
Member for Long Island.
Mr. Speaker, I have every right to defend myself in here, and what I post on social media is what activated the movement to rescue the people after the devastation. What I spoke to, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that I asked you this morning, through the leader of the opposition business, if I would have an opportunity to address this House on behalf of the 3/5 of the Bahamian people that were affected by the hurricane. You denied him. I then saw you personally. You then denied me as well, saying that I would not have that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I have not been in this House since the 30th of September, when I stood to my feet very early in the day before the business of this House began to let you know I didn't know the Doppler radar was not working. I spoke to the fact of what people on the ground were already feeling. The rise in the tide and the hurricane-like weather they were already undergoing. It was me that said in this House on the 30th of September, you then asked me to have a seat and that the minister responsible would give an advisory. During the course of that day, Mr. Speaker, I kept updating this House as to what was going on in Long Island. Two of these people on our side, two of our members, left to go to Grand Bahama and to Abaco. It was in the evening around 10 p.m. I said, Long Island is under attack by this hurricane. And there were no warnings placed until midnight that night, Mr. Speaker. And I thought that I should have an opportunity to speak to the Bahamian people very comprehensively as to what has happened in these islands. And you, sir, told me emphatically that you ended the meeting that I had with you and I would not have the opportunity to speak. Hence, I posted that this is a most undemocratic procedure in this House.
Thank you, Honourable Member. You're correct. Statements and communication by ministers. Chair recognizes Honorable Member for Carmichael.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we survey this wonderful nation, and we thank God for being spared, life being spared during this terrible storm,
I am the MP for
we say,
Long Island. I have every right.
From Long Island. Member for Long Island, take your seat.
Do not be ridiculous. They voted for me. You are the most ridiculous woman I have ever met. I speak for Long Island. I'm the only opposition member that has people that were affected. 3,000 plus people.
Be sure that these
That's why you
unprofessional, be sure that these unprofessional utterances are not heard on the electronic. Member for Long Island, you are out of order.
The people voted for me to be here.
Honorable members,
But you can't silence Long Island.
member for Carmichael, you have the floor.
thank you, sir.
Embarrassed into inaction.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, as we survey this wonderful nation, and we thank God for no lives being lost in the cause of the recent natural disaster, I have to tell you we had a great gathering of young people last night at the Malia Hotel, and after that meeting, I have a feeling that everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. Mr. Speaker, this month our ministry once again hosts the activities of celebrating young people in this nation under the theme of youth, hashtag Youth Matter. The theme Youth Matter is an answer to the cry of a modern and youthful society such as the Bahamas, representing the concerns, ideals, dreams, and aspirations of youth in a tech-savvy expression, with the hashtag present as a mark, as members were saying earlier, of a modern trend in communications among young people. Mr. Speaker, I also want to make mention, honorable mention, of a young man last night at the National Youth Awards who got a nomination and award for youth community service and volunteerism. This young man is none other than Trumiko Bonnaby. And Bonnaby came here all the way from Crooked Island, ravaged in the circumstances that he could get here in, to talk to other young people at that event, to tell them that he thinks that Crooked Island will be fine and they wish to rebuild. The Speaker, he told me that during that time, he was reading from the Psalms, particularly Psalm 121, where even in the midst of the storm, God is still with us. Mr. Speaker, in the Bahamas today, in this context, we wish to acknowledge that this theme, in fact, is so emblematical and pure to pay attention to the voices of the young people in this country. Their concerns should always be at the forefront of our development and programmatic agendas, and we should ensure that access and opportunity is ever present for them. The planned program of National Youth Month 2015, sir, is exciting and fulfilled with all of the activities and initiatives being opened to the participation of everyone in the general public. Today, Mr. Speaker, as we speak here, for over 500 young Bahamians are gathered to make insightful and very, very important inputs into the National Development Plan, the first of its kind. Congratulations to the member from Pinewood and his team for pushing this plan forward, and for the hundreds of young people around this country who have taken their time to make sure that they have their input involved. Throughout the month, sir, these activities will showcase the many positive role models that we have among young people, outstanding leaders within our country, while encouraging unattached, marginalized, and at-risk youth, the ones who seem to be at the bottom of the pile, to get involved. I'm inviting them and enlisting them in meaningful programs and projects in their communities where they live. The success of this month, sir, will be measured to a great extent by that public participation of the people who hardly ever get acknowledged. How will any society, sir, exist without a strong, vibrant, and passionate young population? While we celebrate youth, it is important that we invite all youth to join with us as we attempt to encourage every young person to support this nation-building effort. Today, sir, I am extremely excited and proud to celebrate with the young people of this country who so proudly represent us. Youth development, sporting excellence, deepening of the Bahamian culture is my personal passion, and that I find it a joy and a privilege, sir, to work on behalf of the youth of our nation. This Sunday at 3 p.m., the National Youth Rally and Youth Parade of organizations will be held, leaving from Clifford Park and ending at Clifford Park. The parade will go through the traditional neighborhoods of Over the Hill, Baintown, Grantstown, and back to that park. Parents who are seeking to have their children join an organization can come out at this time, see the organizations, and register thereafter. Tomorrow, the Youth in Parliament will resume in these hallowed halls, and on Friday, the discussion will ensue as to what young people think are the solutions to our problems of crime and poverty. This is always a fantastic event. We have a 38-member parliament. There are young people. When you say, Mr. Speaker, that young people are watching us on Thursday and Friday of this week, every single one of you in here, all members, there has been a young person who has been watching you for about 6 months, and they will be sitting in your chair representing their views on that occasion as to what they think are the most important things in this nation. The two things they came up with is you cannot build a house without a plan. We need a national development plan. The second thing is that poverty is robbery, and they're talking about poverty alleviation. We are pleased to report, sir, that the Broadcasting Corporation will be airing the former segments of the National Youth Parliament leading up to this day, and we are currently inviting participants via www.celebrateyouthbahamas.org website to secure the participation of their sessions that afternoon. Mr. Speaker, an element of our youth development through the arts program, which has been so successful, we put on one of the best theatrical works in recent times called The Thief of Love. The play is a musical steeped in Bahamian culture, art, music, and dance, and tells a riveting story of love between two friends, two different cultures, but in one place. The play was written by Therese Davis Nixon, our cultural officer, and reveals many of the intricacies about Bahamian life, immigration, things happening within our culture and in our homes. The viewing for this will be October 22nd, and the second part will be out next week. Mr. Speaker, last night we had the National Youth Awards. I want to congratulate all of the winners. We have to really give a huge congratulations to the individuals who came in from Grand Bahama, who did a fantastic job. The chocolate test, I don't want to call any names, but we had, you had some really impressive young people who are entrepreneurs, community leaders. Bishop Williams' son, who's leading a young men's organization. These are the people we are putting our investment, our resources in. I want you all to listen to their story, pay them attention, give them a chance in your hearts. We also wish to invite all members of the House today to the closing ceremony of the Youth National Development Discussion at 3 p.m. at Malia. That's today at 3 p.m. at Malia. If the members of the House would come out to that closing ceremony, that will be where they will give us their ideas on what they think should be in the national plan for the next 20 years. The Youth Awards were a huge success, sir. We also had a medal presentation ceremony at Government House, where we saw Her Excellency Dame Margaret Pindling host the pinning ceremony, along with the Princess Royal. All our young people, 37 in total, were celebrated at that time. We wish to let the public know that over 187 people were nominated for these awards, and we've had the top in every field of endeavor in the country. The Fresh Start program begins again, and we are very particularly pleased to be celebrating the accomplishments of this group of people who will follow their interviews of recent weeks and get started with their programs as they embark on their new exposure towards job readiness, personal development, and training. 80% of the people passing through this program, Mr. Speaker, find gainful employment. Mr. Speaker, some other good things are happening for the Bahamas in this Youth Month. The Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture takes immense pride this week in conveying our congratulations to our very own Toriano the Tornado Johnson again on his most recent and convincing victory against top-notch Irish boxer Eamon O'Kane in the IBF middleweight title elimination bout held this weekend in Madison Square Gardens. Johnson knocked him down twice in the first round on his way to a unified, complete victory. And Johnson is now really the second in the world overall, and he will be absolutely, he has in 3 divisions, and we now await the IBC, that is the unification of all belts. The only other Bahamian to have done this is Elijah Obed, and I want to let people here know that Toriano Johnson will get the opportunity to unify all the belts in the world later this year. The ministry and the people of the Bahamas are very proud to support him in this endeavor. Mr. Speaker, we also wish from our ministry and the people of the Bahamas to congratulate 2 college basketball standouts this week who've received individual honors, the great Buddy Hield and Lou Tum Tum Rawls Nairn. Hield of the Oklahoma Sooners is now the Big 12 Player of the Year, was recently named All-American in the top 25 players in the entire NCAA conference. He is now ranked number 8 in the world in that class. Nairn of the Michigan State Spartans is ranked number 13 and also has been named one of the team's captains for the season 2015-2016. Mr. Speaker, at the end of this month, we go into National Sports Heritage Month, and then we will come back at you again in December with National Cultural Heritage Month. We want people to know that in the Sports Heritage Month, we'll be honoring a huge group of people. You'll be seeing them over the next few weeks. And of course, we put the Junkanoo on notice that this year we expect the Junkanoo will receive the greatest support they've ever seen. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much. Pray for our young people. They're praying for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further statements and communication by ministers. By the way, Member for Clandestin, were you able to table the doc? You may table it now?
Yes, I'm tabling it now.
Very well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order that the communications do lie on the table. And also Member for Carmichael, your communication. Order that it be brought up. Thank you. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. Chair recognized.
Member for Long Island about to stand. If you intend to, because I'm about to move for suspension, I will allow it.
The member yields. The chair recognized honourable member for Long
Thank you very much
Island.
to the member for West End. Mr. Speaker, I ask once again, will I have the opportunity to address, as the ministers have, on their view of what happened, if I will have that opportunity to do the same today in this House?
No, you will not.
Can you tell me the reason why I will not have the
Member, take your seat.
opportunity, Mr. Speaker?
Member, you take your seat. You take your seat.
As discussed with you, Mr. Speaker,
Member
I wish
for
to
West
now
Grand, Bama
move
and
for
Bimini.
suspension of the Honorable House to November 4th, 2015.
Moved and seconded, the business of this House suspends until November 4th at 10 a.m. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The business of this House suspends until Wednesday, November 4th at 10 a.m.
All right.
Proceedings in the House of Assembly now suspended until November 4th. But today, Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, highlighting the latest measures, giving updates of what are happening in the recovery efforts. He said that the government is highlighting, he highlighted a lot of measures the government believes will go a long way in the restoration process. He said that they've established the National Restoration and Recovery Unit to put special emphasis on the restoration process. Now, Jack Thompson is the administrative coordinator for that, while Melanie Roach, the engineer, is the technical coordinator for it. Retired Permanent Secretary Barbara Burrows acting as a non-technical coordinator. If you want to contact the National Restoration and Recovery Unit, their numbers go into effect tomorrow, and they are 323-4281 or 2. That's 323-4281 or 2. And you can get through to them at nrru@bahamas.gov.bs. That's nrru@bahamas.gov.bs. Now, Operation Recovery 242, which is working hand in hand with the NRRU, also has a Facebook page in addition to a website, and you can get constant updates as to what's happening on that page. Now, the Prime Minister also gave details of the teams that were deployed, details of school openings and which other schools had work that had to be done. And after his very exhaustive and comprehensive address, the Engliston MP, Glenys Hanna-Martin, who is the Transportation and Aviation Minister, addressed again the issue of the radar issue that has been criticized by one of the local dailies. Anyway, we're going to take you directly to the House of Assembly right now, where Janelle Noel Ferguson is standing by and has further details for us.
It was a very extensive morning in Parliament today as Prime Minister Perry Christie communicated to the House the second official assessment of the damages sustained in regards to Hurricane Joaquin. The Prime Minister indicated that much progress has been made in many of the islands. He gave a breakdown on a lot of the islands in terms of infrastructure being repaired by BEC, BTC, and water and sewage. He also noted that a number of schools in those islands have been reopened, and it's important to have those schools reestablished in those communities for those communities to continue. Now, the Prime Minister also indicated that airports have opened in all of those islands and assessments have continued. He also commended The work by NEMA international partners who've joined with the Bahamas in this recovery effort, and also officers from the Royal Bahamas Defense Force who've been deployed to those islands. Now, we also got a response from the Minister of Transport and Aviation, Glenys Hanna Martin, responding to online articles, or publications rather, that have been published in recent days on the Doppler radar system, indicating that it was not in operation when Hurricane Joaquin was passing over the Bahamas. Well, the minister reiterated today that those claims and allegations that the Prime Minister misled the House with that information are completely false. She said that the Doppler radar system is in fact in operation and was in operation at that time. Now, the MP for Long Island, Loretta Butler Turner, had made a number of requests to the Speaker of the House to address the House on the damages sustained in her constituency and an update on the progress made. However, the Speaker of the House, Dr. Kendall Major, denied that request. While the House of Assembly will resume on November 4th, you can continue to watch live proceedings right here on Parliamentary Channel 40. Janae Nawal Ferguson from Parliament, back to you in the studio, Julian.
Yeah, and that ends our broadcast. Join us again when we are back. There should be coverage of the Senate tomorrow. I'm Julian Reed.